Oh, we don't need no fancy words. I mean, we need to practice. We need to rehearse.
I'll tell you what we need. We need some paying gigs. We don't need this messing around, first one patio and then another, and that's ridiculous.
We don't got no goddamn band. We don't need fucking practice with
Yep. All right, and this is the No GD Band podcast. And I'm Chris.
And I'm Henry. And joining us today is Greg.
Producer
Greg.
Greg.
Our new producer. And I guess that's what we're going to call you.
It's fine.
Producer Greg, if that's good. He even brought his own headphones, so I felt...
If you're enjoying the light, airy, amazing edits of the newer episodes of our podcast, it's not because of me, it's because of producer Greg.
That's right.
What I especially love are the texts from Henry just like going on and on, praising his production, thinking, does he remember that I was the guy that was doing all the producing before?
Sorry.
Yeah. Anyway, first we wanted to start with the news of the day, which is the Kavanaugh hearings. Is that what they are right now? It seems more like speeches to me than hearings.
So I watched the news yesterday and saw that it was some kind of weird melee situation where everybody, all the extras that weren't press or senators were escorted out of that place, and then more would come in. They'd escort them out again. Is that right?
It could be. I mean, they were going on and on for maybe like 30 minutes. They had 30-minute question and answer segments all day today. And I have to tell you, I heard Senator Leahy and Senator Grassley going back and forth, and it sounded like two old men arguing over the placement of a rose bush with regard to a property line.
Really?
Well, for me, it seems like from the rioting people in the gallery to the senators to Kavanaugh himself, it's already a done deal. And this is all just for the television grandstanding, because if they get this vote in before the midterms, it's a done deal. It can't be stopped, I don't think. So it's kind of, to me, watching them all, like watching the Democrats stand up on the table and beat their head against the table, and then the it's just kind of a show more than it is actual hearing.
I think what's important is to understand that there are so many documents with regard to this man's background that they did not get, or when they got them, it was just moments before the hearing was about to take place. And I think that's what's got them upset.
But see, the problem is that's all that is a political equation that they made, which is normal Americans are going to say sour grapes. And it's sad because Republicans, to me, seem more willing to play that game, which is why we're here anyway, because they were willing to say, if we just don't vote for or even let a hearing come about for Merrick Garland, normal Americans won't storm the Capitol. I think in 30 years, this Merrick Garland Kavanaugh thing is going to be more important than any of the Trump stuff that happened, because in 30 years, you're still going to have a conservative court because of this vote, and you're going to have kids now, the way they think is going to be so out of sync with the way the court thinks that it's going to be kind of nuts to be in a society that maybe 80% of the people are left of center, and the courts, which still determine what's really the law, is going to be right of center. That's where it's going to get interesting. And I think more people will talk about, how did they let them not vote for this guy at all, and then railroaded this vote through and nobody said anything,
Well, and even if they're unsuccessful, which they won't be. Right. They won't be successful. Even if they're unsuccessful, it is a rallying point for people to vote in the November elections anyway. So as performance art, it probably works, right?
The sad part is, to me, again, that we know so little about American civics that we'll think that's more important than the way the Supreme Court goes for the next 30 years.
But as the system works, when we're old men and there's probably hopefully a more liberal government, they're going to write more liberal laws in a way that even the most conservative court can't just interpret them. If they're going to be strict constructionists and they're going to read to the letter of the law, then it's going to have to be
So you're saying
let's be
you think
honest. They're strict constructionists when it pleases them. You know, ever since the Bush Gore Supreme Court decision, up until then, and having been a person that went to law school, I still thought the Supreme Court was above politics. And then that decision came down, and I was like,
nope.
Oh no, they really are a political entity. And I'm worried about that whole. Yes, Scalia, when it suited him, was a strict constructionist, but he still used a cell phone, and he still was fine with laws that govern cell phones, although they're not mentioned in the Constitution at all.
But for a conservative,
right?
a conservative vote in the court, Obamacare would have failed, right? That guy basically, it was one vote, and he said the reason why he voted it was the centrist Roberts.
No,
right?
He wasn't a centrist, but what he is he's an institutionalist.
Okay.
And I think he knew that if he went the way maybe his heart wanted him to go, that the court would lose a lot of legitimacy with the American people.
And it's the Roberts Court, too. He's the Chief Justice. I kind of took a cynical view of Roberts, too, because I'm a liberal, but my view was he gave that one to the liberals because when they get the conservative court, he's going to start smacking the ball out of the park on the conservative side. But also, I do want to, on a optimistic point of view, I do like that Roberts did seem to say exactly what you were saying. Like, no, I can't just go with my feelings all the time. I'm supposed to leave those at home.
Right.
Right. So I like that sentiment. I hope that's true. I think the worry is that no one wants to talk about because it's rude is that there's a couple on the court right now that are probably not going to live to see the end of a second term Trump administration. And then you're 6'3", and that's a 30, 40 year cycle before you can change that, even if you wanted to change it. So, I mean, God love her. I know Ruth Bader Ginsburg said she's hanging in there, but you know, I mean,
yeah, you never know.
I hope she keeps doing that everyday yoga thing that she's got going. So
eat your Wheaties.
On a similar note, the other big story going on in Washington, I guess, is the Woodward book.
Yep, that's going to come out on the 12th, but we know a lot about it now.
There's a lot of excerpts out. I want to say right up front, I haven't read any yet, so I hate to.
Nobody has
comment on. Okay,
well, just bits, you know, the bits that are in the Washington Post or whatever.
Right.
I mean, I feel like it's kind of the same book as the book that the gossip guy came out with a couple years ago, except Woodward is actually like a respected journalist. But it kind of feels like, just from what I'm hearing, it's pretty much given the same kind of points. Like, it's chaos, crazy, they're all backstabbing each other, and Trump is nuts.
It's all been that way. I mean, all of the books have sort of outlaid this same sort of picture. And so when you add them all together, you're like, well, either they're all just completely fabrication and they're the same fabrication, or, you know, that's probably what's really going on.
Even better was the recorded tape of him talking to Woodward in his office with people there, and he talks in circles. They don't want him to know that Woodward is wanting to talk to him, and all that stuff. It's a window into just chaos.
But both times they said, oh, well, you know, like when Omarosa called in and said, I've been let go, I was sent out. He's like, oh, I didn't know that. Well, he did the exact same thing with the author. I'm blanking on his name.
With Bob Woodward.
With Bob Woodward.
So you think he's lying?
I think either, I do.
I thought he was just an idiot that didn't know.
I think he lies. I agree. Like the Omarosa call to me sounded like the kind of guy we all know that like rails on a subordinate and then tells one to level up, go fire that person. And then when that person comes running to him like, what? I didn't know that happened. Like, shit, that sucks.
One of those guys.
I mean, it sounded exactly like that to me.
One of those guys in the administration, we don't know who it is, wrote an anonymous op-ed that was posted, a couple of hours ago. And the title of it is, I am part of the resistance, and says basically that they're running, I guess, a dual presidency, right? Where Trump does his thing and everybody tries to stop him from making crazy happen.
Yeah, but if the policies are coming out are the ones from the good shadow puppet government, then I'm kind of terrified of what the Trump version would be. And
that there are, he's basically saying there are, level-headed people in the White House, and I'm one of them.
So what is it? What is something he can point to that they've done that saved us from the brink? I'm just curious because I like, some of the stuff we've done, like getting in a trade war with China, that to me, probably right after the re-election will cause us to go into a recession. Like, you can't go into a trade war with your biggest creditor, the person that owns more of your bonds than you do.
The article doesn't say anything that they've done specifically, but the New York Times is not going to say who he is, but they know who he is.
The other, I guess this is kind of the same point, but the article I read, the guy, it was an editorial. The guy was saying the most serious question raised by Woodward's book is the idea that people in the Situation Room alongside Trump view him as so lacking in sophistication and judgment that they take extreme measures, described as an administrative coup d'etat, to sidestep the threat they perceive he poses to national security, which is, I guess, a long-winded way of saying the same thing you're saying. But again, that sounds like the kind of thing that all of us on the left are standing on a table going, why isn't everybody's hair on fire? And the people on the right are just like, this is just you guys getting all worked up.
They will put up with it because they approve of some of his policies that they believe are working.
And they're getting, and the evangelicals,
say.
Exactly, and the evangelicals are getting the right-wing people on the court, and that's their thing, and they're going to hold to it. And I even heard an interview done about Vice President Pence. He believes firmly that the Lord wants him to be president, and if he's got to latch on to this lecherous SOB Trump, then that's just the boat that's going to carry him.
And you think Trump's scary. Here, if Pence becomes president, he won't be able to take a meeting with a female without his wife being president.
Without mother being there.
Man,
Mom's not here yet. Wait.
It's so creepy.
My dick might just accidentally come out of my pants and get into your hand. I'm so sorry. I mentioned a couple episodes ago about this Chris Hardwick situation, which when I heard that he had been accused, I guess because I related to him so much and I watched a lot of his programs and listened to his podcast, it incensed me in a way that a lot of the others had not. So I was really furious to see that everybody that he worked for decided to take him back. To me, the whole reason that the investigation found no valid evidence and it was okay to reinstate him was because the accuser refused to participate in their investigation. So they said they had nothing but her word and she wouldn't talk to them. Well, if people that employ the guy and have a vested interest in how much money he makes for them is running an investigation and then ask her to be a part of it, I can see where she's like, nah. So it's unbelievable to me that society at large is like, well, they did an investigation and nobody found anything. So, and it reminded me a lot of the whole thing back in the 80s when people first started coming forward with rape. It was, well, it's your word against his, and you shouldn't take it to court because they're going to run you through the mud. So guess we're just not going to do anything about it.
There was a lot more fear then, too. I mean, retaliation was a real thing.
Right. And you see, like, Chris Hardwick being reinstated, and then you've got the Louis C.K. situation where how can the guy just walk back into the comedy club and do a set and tell a rape joke and not even think
to what he was doing,
and not even think I probably shouldn't, at least if I'm going to do this, I probably shouldn't tell a rape joke, or B, not get booed out of the club, which he wasn't. I don't know if you read the article.
No,
a couple of women in the club said they felt a pressure because it was a heavily male audience hooting and hollering about he's back. They felt like kind of afraid to say anything. Which is like, isn't that the antithesis of what's going on right now? Like, isn't that the exact opposite of what we should be talking about?
Nobody goes after Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor did all kinds of stupid shit and confessed to a lot of bad things.
But that was 20 years ago.
Now, of course, if the guy makes a misstep, right, or does what he does.
So hold on a second. So jerking off in a professional meeting with female subordinates is making a misstep?
That certainly, when you say it's a misstep.
No, I would say that's actually a crime.
People don't really look at this as important as they profess in public. I think it's all about sound and fury and doesn't signify much in reality. I don't think they truly care. that much. That's why the men in the audience, he's back, because the groundswell is on the internet.
Is
Is
it possible? Is it possible that when people sort of look into their own lives and look back on things that they did back years ago, that they go, you know what? Maybe if I'm going to come out hard on any one person, then I myself might be subject to whatever scrutiny later on, and then I'm the asshole because I'm now the hypocrite.
Where I come down on that is, if you take those arguments to the logical conclusion that I have to be perfect in my own personal life before I'm allowed to say something is wrong. So if I said an N-word joke when I was 12, I'm now not allowed to say Louis C.K. Shouldn't masturbate in front of employees. That's a crazy argument that, well, until you're perfect, you're not allowed to say anything, which is nuts to me. I think there's more of a prevalent undercurrent of, I just don't think he did anything wrong. He didn't hit those girls. He just came out of the bathroom. He's a funny guy, and he was, playing with his dick. I feel really offended by this stuff. I'm a big Louis C.K. fan, and I don't want to see anything from that guy. I don't want to see anything he's doing. I don't want to see. And he didn't even apologize. I mean, he admitted to it right off the bat, but he hadn't apologized or gone through any kind of.
He didn't go on video or anything
and say, "I'm
sorry." Did he say that in his letter? I don't even remember.
I don't think he did, but
so redemption is not possible for this guy.
No, but I think first you got to go through, like, I did something wrong. I shouldn't do those things,
and go through the motions of working to fix that and talk to the public about it and go on record about it.
Actually pretend to give a shit
rather than just walk in unscheduled. All right,
and do a rape joke
at the comedy. Whatever. There's an easy segue here to the other side of the coin, which is
why is this the other side?
The victims can also become the perpetrators. I mean, look at what Asia Argento has been accused of with this.
But again, this is like this is the opposite. So she can never be accused of something because she has been abused.
No, it happens. I'm saying that the cycle is pernicious. Many times victims become perps themselves in abusive situations.
I don't think so. I see what you're saying. You're saying, like, if a kid is abused and they become abusers.
They can be.
I'm not sure she abused this guy because she...
I don't know why.
was treated that. I think she abused this guy because she wanted to have sex with a young dude.
You think that's why?
I mean, I don't think it had anything to do with her. I think it happened like 10 years ago. It maybe even happened before.
I mean, who knows? Who knows who else has victimized her in the past? Who knows?
Yeah, so it sounds like already I need whiskey.
Oh, show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. No, don't ask why. For we must find the next whiskey bar. Or if we don't find the next whiskey bar, I tell you we must die.
All right, so Henry, my brother-in-law brought us a whiskey from Japan, and he's a fan of the show, and he's like, check this one out. And what is it called?
It is called Royal Suntory Whiskey. Now, I've seen Suntory.
Okay.
Is Royal like the high end of that?
I really don't know. I know is that...
Allow me to Google this.
Everything on the back label is in Japanese. There's no English on the back label.
That's pretty badass.
That's pretty awesome, right?
You can get this bottle of Suntory Royal for $259 at the Kanta website.
My brother-in-law Doug is rolling pretty.
Doug, this is some good stuff, man.
And I have to say it's one of the better ones we've tasted, but maybe I didn't know the dollar value was up in there.
Isn't Suntory the brand that Bill Murray is like advertising in that movie?
I thought that too, but I didn't look it up, so I didn't want to say it and sound like an idiot. But I think it is where he's doing all those commercials and
Suntory time.
Oh yeah. That is right.
Now, is this? I don't know, Henry. Have you got it pulled up on the internet? Is this a rice whiskey?
Let's see. It is a blended whiskey. It has a character of orange and acetone and toffee and honeysuckle. according to this.
I'm getting all that.
I'm feeling that. I'm feeling that vibe, yeah. Well, Doug, we're going to give all of us 2 thumbs up on this high dollar. I think this is the most expensive bottle we've reviewed.
Quite, yes.
I think
so.
So, thank you, Doug. Keep sending in bottles if you want to hear about them.
Send us your leftovers.
Oh, show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. No, don't ask why. For we must find the next whiskey bar. Or if we don't find the next whiskey bar, I tell you we must die.
If you listen to episode 30, there was a whole story that I told about an incident that happened in my neighborhood in which a police report had been filed against someone for a rape police report. It's not really a charge, right? When somebody tells the cops, "Hey, I've been raped," they just take a report.
So a charge is
somebody has to charge you with evidence,
right?
right?
When a charge is when you were brought into the station, booked, and charged with a crime.
So no one was charged in this situation. But episode 30, we'll talk about all that. The idea, I think, is we had some sort of outline questions. And did you want to retell the thing, Greg, or what?
Yeah, I'll just quickly recap as best as I can. Long and short of it was you had a friend who dated someone online briefly, broke it off, and then this person randomly showed up to a neighborhood backyard party, basically, with a date.
Pool party.
Pool party. And then ditched the date and then went off with your friend and clearly seemed to be more interested in him. This is all our supposition. Everything we're saying is our supposition based on what we know, which is limited. But having said that, long story short, few days later after that, your wife finds a police blotter that indicates that there was a report of a forcible rape at the pool on the night of the party.
Right.
And consequently, you look at the time that the alleged incident occurred and discovered that, well, if that's what she's alleging, that it couldn't have occurred at that time because you had video evidence of her at your house just enjoying a party, an after party.
We were hanging out on the back deck.
And you shared that evidence with your friend.
Right. I shared it with him.
Right.
And then he met with, he went and proactively reached out to the detective. Gave the detective my name and information. Said, Henry has, the video and all that stuff.
Right. And so what I found interesting was that you were on both sides of the same issue insofar as, and that's not a bad thing. It's just, it was interesting because you were sort of juxtaposed insofar as that you were upset that the charge had been leveled against your friend, and yet at the same time you seem to be surprised that the detective didn't seem to be very interested in pursuing.
I think that's what it was. Like, of course, I don't want him to be. I don't want someone to tell falsehoods about what happened and put in a police report. Isn't it right for the detective to circle back and to confirm with me that I indeed have this information and here it is? And this is the time it was, and all of those things. Wouldn't due diligence mean that you do that, right?
Right.
He could have made up anything. I could be a figment,
Right.
Who knows?
Right.
And I think that's one thing that concerned me is that the onus on the detective to follow up with me directly didn't happen.
My first thought on that is the difference between what we in the public think a prosecutor is supposed to do and what a prosecutor thinks his job is. And I think it's the same with a police officer who has someone come in and make an allegation. His thought is not, I need to do due diligence and follow up and make sure that this isn't true. His job in his mind, I think, is can I make a case, a charge that will stick on a person? And I think what he thought, Henry, before he even heard your video evidence was this person, this girl does not seem like a credible enough witness. He may have even pulled her previous and said, there's no way I can make a charge stick against your friend.
Well, and didn't this other woman also level a secondary charge, which was quickly, although very a horrific charge, was also quickly ruled sort of no way.
Right. Apparently, she called DSS
In Georgia.
where his daughter lives, and claimed that she was sleeping in the bed with him and touching her.
Which is an interesting, I think that goes to my point too, which is interesting, Henry, because DSS, from what I've encountered with them, they do run down everything. Their job is more like, I see the child, the welfare of the child is my job, not can I charge somebody with a crime. So they run down and say, I got to talk to this kid, even if it's a BS allegation. In my line of work, if one of my clients makes an allegation against one of my caregivers, the state always shows up. And even if they walk in the door and go, this sounds like total garbage, I got to run this down. Whereas a police officer is like, I got to figure out if I can make a charge stick.
And they file a report too. Like that same service that we use, it's a free one. It's called Spot Crime, apparently, that just pulls in all police data and just provides it on a map, right?
Right.
A report from his particular area of the street came through on that email. Similar to maybe what DSS had been told in Georgia. So that they have to file that information with the local police too. So there's got to be another report out there about that.
And so I think that that's a critical point that you brought up, which is what I was also going to bring up insofar as what the detective is thinking is probably, do I have something I can bring to a DA? And will the DA then be able to get a charge? Because his job is to get convictions. At the end of the day...
Right. The DA he sees his job as getting convictions, not following justice, even though we may think that's what we want him to. And maybe that is what we want him to do. But he sees his job as getting convictions. And it's also critical to note that the DA is the one that would charge your friend, not the police officer. So that this police officer is probably like, I can't bring...
Even if I bring the DA everything I have, the DA
he's going to be like, no,
I can't.
So you're saying like that since the accusation didn't make any sense
to him,
that
it's okay for him not to pursue it.
Right? I wouldn't put it quite like that. I would say that at the end of the day, when he looked at all the evidence that he had, that given what he had, he didn't feel like he could. If he took that to the DA, maybe he did take it to the DA, and the DA said,
"There's nothing here. I can't get it.
I can't get anything to stick."
How do you feel about that? Do you think that's good or bad?
I think it's a difference in.
Is he allowed to make that judgment on the front?
I think it's a difference in what we theoretically want our justice system to be and what it actually is on the ground. We want cops to be detectives that run down every lead and have all this time in the world to sit and, make sure that everything is done for justice. And we want our DAs to say, you know what? I don't believe this person committed this crime. Even though I have enough evidence that I think I can convict them, I won't prosecute somebody that I think might be innocent. DAs don't think that way. DAs think, do I have enough evidence to convict a person of a crime? Henry, you know this from listening to a podcast that
In the Dark with Curtis Flowers.
And really what the prosecutor probably has not been interviewed on that podcast, but what the prosecutor would say behind closed doors is, I've got this guy convicted 6 times or whatever. I'm doing my job. I don't care if he did it. And I think you'll find this also. A lot of defense attorneys behind closed doors say, I don't care if they did it or didn't do it. It doesn't even have anything to do with my job. My job is to keep them out of jail. His job is to put them in jail. Now, is that the way we want things? Is that the right way for things to be? I don't know.
If you stop and you think about the taxpayers, because the DA is always, I think a lot of times think about the taxpayers. What do the taxpayers want? Do the taxpayers want me to chase down this
video?
This he said, she said thing. Not that it's not legit or not that it's not a real thing, or would they rather me chase down this murderer that I have that I can convict and get put in jail for a long time, and I only have a limited amount of time.
Yeah, and it also seems to me like if I'm the cop and I'm going, I'm not going to take this to the DA anyway. Why do I need to drive out and look at a video that's going to reinforce the fact that I'm not going to take this to the DA anyway? You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I've already decided I'm not taking it. And I'm glad you have this video, but I don't need to see it.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that he didn't take it to a supervisor or that he didn't take it to a level above. I doubt that he just, because there's a chain of command. I doubt that it was just, he just decided for himself. I'm suspecting that there's probably, if nothing else, there's a paper trail.
This also comes on the heels of me listening to gross malfeasance in the case of Curtis Flowers, where detectives did not pursue lines of evidence that they should have, didn't take note of what was going on, and just bought what the DA wanted to sling hook, line, and sinker, and pursue all evidence to that end.
I guess though I still have the same question that Greg has, which is, if they had charged your friend and not come and look at your video, then I would be outraged. But the fact that they have not charged him and they don't want to look at the video, it to me is like, dude, I already don't want to charge him. So why do I need to see a video that's going to reinforce that I don't want to charge this guy?
Yeah, I didn't know that. I get different stories out of this, but I'm just concerned that if someone who has a checkered past or maybe has some mental health issues makes a claim like that, are they easily dismissed because they've said crazy shit on the internet or stalked somebody or done nutty things? Is she disbelieved just because she's engaged in a pattern of shit behavior before this?
But again, I think that's where we go back to what the district attorney might be thinking is the past behavior enough to create reasonable doubt such that I can't make this stick?
I can't get a conviction, yes. But here's another thing that I never asked you, Henry, at what point in that evening did your friend think it was a good idea to take her to his house?
Booze is a crazy drug, man.
He had already given her the Dear John letter before this.
Yeah.
Why on earth do you take that person to your home that night?
Well, I mean, like,
I might have thought she might have killed you that night. Like, if I fall asleep, she might put a knife in my throat.
Like you said, when you saw the kids were there, you're like, well, that should have been a red flag, but
like this might not be a good thing here.
I would have never, in my wildest dream, what I would have done is, if I was being the ultimate pussy, I would have agreed at the pool party to go to Henry's house. She would have gone to Henry's house, and I would have gone home and locked the door and let Henry deal with the crazy thing. That's like the closest she would have got to getting in my house that night.
Man, if I hadn't, the weird thing about it is if I hadn't made that questionable judgment inviting them over to my house, there wouldn't be any evidence. In my head, I want an investigation. I want, like, surety one way or the other. I've heard people tell bullshit stories, male, female, whatever, that have just had a kernel of truth and tons of hyperbole, attached to it.
But I do think,
so it's like, fuck. I don't know what to believe.
I still think you have this idealized version of what an investigation is.
Yeah,
because a lot of times the investigation is, I just got to find stuff that'll match what I want to convict Greg of something, so I'm just going to go out and look for shit that makes it look like Greg did this, whether or not.
Right.
And you're like, I wish they hadn't done such a big investigation because now Greg's going to jail for something
he didn't do.
Right.
Or in this case, he did do a complete investigation. After corroborating everything else and looking at what he had, he went, I don't have anything here. I've looked at everything that exists, and I don't have anything to prove that a crime was committed.
Right.
I just don't have it.
I think the scary thing about it to me is, if she hadn't have had the history that I think you think she had, and there might have been something in his past, just something small that had nothing to do with rape, it might have gone to your video to clear him. It might have been, we're going to charge this guy.
And even then, I would have said that doesn't clear him. Because, okay, if she admits she had a couple of drinks, maybe she got the time wrong, but that doesn't mean a crime didn't occur.
Oh, I agree. And and also, in my mind, I'm sitting here thinking, I'm going to have to go talk to my defense attorney from jail, and the first question he's going to ask is, what did you take a girl home who you already got rid of, who showed up with another, like all the stuff that we know about? He's like, man.
That was stupid.
Man, you're making this real hard on me. Like, because that was stupid. Like,
well, you're making it hard on yourself. I mean,
well, yeah, but a defense attorney would be like, You're making. I gotta try to win this, and I don't.
What the defense attorney is going to say is, this is going to cost you a lot of money.
Yeah, this is going to.
And I make no guarantees.
Right. Do you want to go ahead and plead this, or do you want to go the expensive route? Yeah.
Let's and listen. If we plead this, then this is probably what we're going to get. And I mean, or if you want to go in front of a jury and do this.
Well, see, that's the other part of the equation. We're laughing about it, but that's the other part. DAs look at this and sometimes they look at the evidence and say, I don't think I can get a conviction, but I can scare them bad enough into taking a plea deal.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't want to go before a jury, but I don't. In his mind, he's going, I don't even know if I've got enough evidence to convict this dude of this. Well, my older brother is a defense attorney and will tell you when the rubber meets the road that 9 times out of 10, unless he's got some sort of evidence that the police did something way violating in violation of the person's rights that he can win on. He normally has people, because by the time it gets to this point, they've got enough evidence to get a conviction in front of a jury. 9 times out of 10, he's telling people, here's the best deal I can get you. And he's usually telling people to take a deal. Now, he'll also tell you that 9 out of the 10 people did whatever it is that he's defending them for. But at the same time, I think that part of it is a bigger. People are taking pleas a lot more often than they're just saying.
Is he a public defender?
Yes.
Okay. Because I was going to say, too, my brother is an attorney as well, and he's like, dude, 9 out of 10 cases don't even get to the courtroom.
Right.
In all kinds of things, because once it gets into the courtroom, boy, you thought it was expensive before. You have no idea how expensive when you get into litigation. So,
yeah, and it's like, your brother's probably the same way too. My brother's done this long enough that he can just look at a case and go, man, here's what the best I can get you. And if you want to go to court and do all this, you're still going to get more time because you made them do a jury trial. Take this plea. I can get it down to X, Y, or Z, and it'll cost you less. I know that sucks because that sounds like not like justice, but that's, I think, the way it actually works.
Well, but we're also, if you're convinced that you didn't do it and you're convinced that there's enough evidence, we let guilty people go free. In fact, our system is designed to let more guilty people go free than jail innocent ones. We would rather let 10 people. That's why we insist that the jury come back unanimous in their decision.
We do on the face, but I will argue the opposite a little bit in that I think public opinion is so strong now on if you're charged with a crime, you're guilty. And also, I think reasonable doubt is a hard concept for regular people to grasp, but it's really, like you said, it's a very lenient level of guilt. All I got to do is say, if I can reasonably, in my own mind, think of one little doubt, I have to, even if I think you did it, I have to say innocent.
Right. Well, no, you say not guilty.
Not guilty, right.
That's about reasonable doubt, not unreasonable doubt.
Right. And that does get some people a little bit shaky, or the jurors may disagree
not all doubt.
about what's reasonable and what's not reasonable.
Well, we were always taught in law school the reasonable man test. So all you would have to say is if a reasonable person came in off the street and you told them your doubt and they went, that could happen, that's reasonable doubt. If they came in off the street and went, that's crazy, that's not reasonable doubt.
But there's another problem with DAs in that I don't know this is always true, but when they make gross violations of the process, when they withhold evidence or don't disclose it to the defense, or if it's found that in jury selection that they unfairly exclude African Americans and things like that, if the court finds that, there's no punishment.
Well,
for them doing that, other than it gets sent back.
I would point to the Duke rape case.
Right?
I would point to the Duke rape case.
Yeah, there is.
He lost his law license. He lost everything. That guy lost everything.
I'm thinking of the Curtis Flowers case where they didn't do anything.
But that's not. But that's just one example. There should be, and I think each state would say there's laws that say if they violated those rules, they could be disbarred.
In North Carolina, they did. Not in where this was.
Yeah, but I mean, there's probably one in North Carolina that happened too. I mean, there's exceptions to every rule, and it's not perfect, but I think that's a clear that could get you disbarred
Right.
if you willingly withhold evidence from the defense that you have.
If it's proven.
When discovery happens, you have to turn over everything to the defense, and if you're
supposed to.
right, and if it's shown that you didn't, there could be there's supposed to be consequences, for that.
including evidence of other suspects and things like that.
Sure.
And in that situation, in Curtis Flowers' situation, I mean, that's an institutional problem for it to get to that level, and then for there to be no consequence. Like, well, we'll just look the other way.
Yeah, they just send it back, and that's all.
Right.
No punishment for those people engaging in that stuff.
And that's when the people, if these DAs are elected or what have you, or the legislators that are elected, definitely need to be, they need to be gone, and we need to get somebody in.
But there are rules on the books that would
Absolutely.
have protected them if they'd have followed the rules. It's not like there's no rule against the DA doing that. It's just in that situation, the good old boy network said, "Nah, not gonna happen. Not for this poor black guy that probably did kill somebody." And that's another way I think DAs think this guy killed somebody.
He's a bad dude. I know that.
Yeah, he's
Right.
a bad person. So I'm not gonna lose sleep about putting this dude in jail. So.
Good Lord, if we beat this horse to
Yeah,
death,
you're gonna
guys.
have to do a lot of editing to get this down.
Un jour, loin du bruit des villes, j'ai vu sous un ciel tout bleu la mer entourant une île où vivaient des gens heureux. J'ai trouvé le paradis pour toi, un pays où le bonheur est roi. Dans un coin de Tahiti, là-bas, j'ai trouvé le paradis, crois-moi.
So I put on there. I don't know if either of you guys are that familiar with the band of Montreal.
A little bit.
Okay, they're an Athens, Georgia band. They've been around a long time. They were part of that Elephant Six movement which was like mid '90s, I guess, when we were all coming through. I have to admit, I was never a big Elephant Six fan, and I never really listened to a lot of Montreal. What I did hear from them, I just didn't.
One of those bands stayed
I
at your
didn't think
house
of.
one night. Remember that?
Yeah, that was
Elf Power.
Elf Power. Yeah, which
Yeah.
was the other big Elephant Six band. They were not nice people either. They
were-
ate everything in
They
my
were a
freezer.
they were a little into themselves, quite frankly.
They just walked in and
That
took
night.
everything out of the freezer, sat down in front of the TV and said, "Oh, cool, you got cable," and watched cable until about
And
8 a.m., eating all my pizza rolls and fish sticks, and then packed up and left.
and didn't talk to us at all.
Which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
Especially since they weren't that big a band at the time.
No.
Yeah. But anyway, so a couple years ago, a friend of mine said, you should hear this album called False Priest. And so I was skeptical of listening to False Priest because I'm not a big of Montreal guy. False Priest blew my mind because it sounded like a Prince record. In fact, it sounds the most like a Prince album of any non-Prince album I've ever heard. And I'm a big Prince fan.
Yeah.
Even more Prince than the World Party.
Yes, more Prince than World Party.
I see you, girlfriend. I got so lucky with you. Yes, I feel you stutter. I got so lucky with you. So freaked out and depressed. Now I see how I was so blessed with you, girlfriend.
So I go back and I start researching False Priest. And Henry, I just wanted to bring this up with you. I didn't know if you knew this. So Hissing Fauna, Are You the Destroyer is kind of known as their definitive album. So Hissing Fauna has two amazing things going on it at once. It's the first half is this big breakup record. So he's breaking up with his wife in real life. And he's wrote these songs about it. He moved to her. She's from Norway, I believe, and they moved to Norway. They lived there an entire winter, and he wasn't prepared for like no sunlight at all. And he started having a mental breakdown. They just had a kid. And so this album was going to be his mental breakdown album and their breakup album. So he gets halfway through the record, and it's all the breakup. And then instead of having a mental breakdown second half, which he says he wrote, but he got rid of, he has this more happy-go-lucky second half where he has what he calls a character split. and he becomes a different person on the second half of the record. Now, the song where he splits is called "The Past is a Grotesque Animal," and that's right in the middle of the record. So at that point, he becomes a character by the name of Georgie Fruit. And it's basically his version, his Bowie becoming Ziggy Stardust. Really? So he becomes Georgie Fruit, and he says, the character's name is Georgie Fruit, and he is in his late 40s. He's a black man who's been through multiple sex changes. He's been a man and a woman and then back to a man. By the way, Barnes is a 40-something-year-old white dude.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know if we want to talk about if that's offensive or not, that the dude appropriated pretending to be a black man that's been transgender. I don't know in PC 2018 if that's appropriate.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
That's what he did.
That's what he did.
We're placing no judgment on that.
Right. And so the next two albums, the rest of Hissing Fauna and then Skeletal Lamping, which is the next album, which is pretty good, and then False Priest, which I just think is fucking amazing, is their Georgie Fruit albums, where he's a different...
he's all that person.
Yes. So I didn't know. I guess I wanted to bring it up because I didn't know if Henry was aware of this like sprawling concept record wrapped inside of the first half being so personal, like talking about his wife and why she's not adequately meeting his needs and why he hates Norway. And then all of a sudden he becomes he splits into a different person.
I didn't know that. I knew that this guy dressed up in interesting clothing. I knew that it was some sort of androgynous in some ways. I knew he presented that way, but I had no idea that it was a Ziggy Stardust character he's doing.
Yeah, so now that he's back to being something Barnes, I can't remember his first name. Even though he does dress kind of crazy and all that stuff, he's staunchly heterosexual. Like he's very much a heterosexual man. But I think what fascinated me about it was how well he pulled it off, because I think the record is actually brilliant. It's not my favorite record, right, but I'm like, damn, Nation, that's like, for a band from Athens that's kind of, I've never really liked. This record is like a sprawling masterpiece in one thing.
I know, I felt a lot better when Chris Gaines went back to Garth Brooks.
Yeah, if you want to hear how it was done, not such a good way, check out the Garth Brooks, Chris Gaines.
We've been doing this other pod, like where we listen to actually like good records and stuff. One of the things that I regret is not including like really shitty ones.
Right,
really
terrible
bad
records,
ones.
right. Anyway, that's Hissing Fauna, and Henry, I really suggest you and our listeners check it out.
To you and and don't say that I have changed, 'cause man, of course I have. Are you far too depressed now even to answer the phone? I guess you just want to shave your head, have a drink and be left alone.
The last item we wanted to talk about was Henry and I are both big, huge Cowboy Junkies fans.
Ah, yes. The roots run strong with these
and
Canadians.
I heard they put a new record out, and of course I was going to give it a chance. I was very skeptical. They've been around a long, long time. Now, Henry and I went and saw them recently. Mm-hmm. They came on tour, touring with their first album, the album that everybody likes from 20 years ago, and they played it like start to finish. And the newer albums, they haven't put out anything since 2012. The newer material is, in my opinion, has just not been as good. So I wasn't really going into this with any kind of expectation, and I don't know if you listened to it, Henry, but man,
I did.
This one blew me away. I think it's probably their third best record, in my opinion.
They're sort of revitalized on this one somehow.
Yeah, and I read an article where the guitar player who writes all those songs and the lyrics, even though he doesn't sing, basically the gist of his interview was, we just stopped giving a fuck because we don't sell records anymore. And I thought this was interesting too. He said, records are an outdated art form anyway. Nobody under 40 gives a shit about a record. So he's like, we just didn't give a shit and decided to do what we wanted to do. And we actually turned out, he said, what he thought was their best record. And I don't think it's their best record, but I think it's really, really good. What did you listen to it at all, Henry?
I did.
What did you think?
I thought that I think their subject matter was what's the word? A little less personal, right? More political, even. Wouldn't you say?
I thought there was definitely a political thing going on.
And
even though they're Canadian, so
yeah, it's almost like a rock thing, if it makes sense. The guitar sounds are a lot more present and modern sounding to me.
Yeah, I found it.
Than the other, like the Nomad stuff.
Yeah, and I found it interesting too. Like you said, like it's touching on a lot of the issues of the day, which I'd never really heard from Cowboy Junkie.
I haven't either.
So yeah, I liked it a lot. So the song we're gonna play from that is called "All the Reckoning Part 2." All right, Henry, the final one is yours.
Okay. Do you remember Low?
Oh, do I remember Low? Yeah. I went and saw them recently when they opened for Slow Dive in D.C. Not on this most recent Slow Dive tour when they put the new record out, but the one where Slow Dive was touring old stuff.
Yep.
And Low was amazing. Like, I'd forgotten
How
all
good
about
they were.
Low. Well, I'd just forgotten all about Low.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God.
So my perception of them was still like they used to do kings of like slow, I guess you call it slowcore, you know, sparse guitar, one drum and a bass. And they would flip this around occasionally, but their new song doesn't even sound like Low anymore. It's it's like a synthesized washout is the beat, and it's like right on the speaker. So if you put it in your car and plug it in, you might even think it's like an error in your jack or whatever. The beat is long and low and harsh in the speaker. But it's totally 2018, and everybody should listen to it.
I've read the review of it, and it's one of those things where, you know how you read reviews on book jackets or CDs when they're like, such and such has gone in such a new direction, and you're always like,
Oh boy.
it's still Low. And then I turned it on, and I had the same reaction Henry did. I was like, holy shit, I don't even know if I like it, but it doesn't sound like Low. So this is kind of cool.
It doesn't. You know, I've always thought that music would take strange directions, and if this is direction, I love it.
Well, cool. We'll go out on that, but we want to thank producer Greg A for producing, because he's awesome.
That's
at
right,
it. And B for
participating so well with us today.
Yeah, and trying to moderate the bullshit that is Henry and I
that
talking.
we throw rocks at each other. If you like us and you might like our sister pod, it's called 80s Music Exposed. It's 80s Exposed on Twitter, so look for that. We go and review records month to month from the 80s, so check us out. And we ain't got no goddamn band, Chris.
Thank